Okay, if you're watching this video, it's because you might have struggled a little bit with the vocabulary words that are needed to solve monohybrid crosses. So we're going to review them before we dive into those problems. So when we're trying to solve for these monohybrid crosses, what we're doing is basically showing this in a Punnett square. So an offspring is going to get an option from each parent. So in this case, this parent gave the option for purple. This parent gave the option for white. Together, they're going to work to give the offspring's color in this case. Now, instead of calling them options, we're going to give them the correct vocabulary word. We're going to call them alleles. Now, alleles are just options or forms of that gene. For example, eye color, you have the option for brown, blue, gray, green. Those would be my alleles. Now, for every trait that you have, you're going to have two alleles. One came from mom, one came from dad. Now, instead of writing out the entire word out, for example, brown or blue, we're just going to use letters to express these alleles. Now, these alleles can be either dominant or recessive. What that means is that some alleles, some options of those traits are going to be stronger than others. So a dominant allele is strong while recessive is weak. So when you put a dominant next to a recessive, the dominant letter or allele will always win. It's always going to show over a recessive allele. Now, to represent a dominant allele, we're going to use uppercase letters. For example, I'm going to use capital T to express the tall allele. Now, for recessive alleles, we're going to use the lowercase letters. For example, I'm going to use lowercase t for short. Now, notice that I kept my letters the same. I chose to use the letter T, so all I'm doing is using a capital and a lowercase. I'm going to keep them the same, though. Now, we said that there was two alleles for every trait. So, for example, if we're looking at the color of the flowers, parent 1 gave the dominant allele, while parent 2 gave the recessive allele. Now, together, we call that the genotype. So, basically, a genotype is the two-letter combination for that trait. Now, there are three possible genotypes, three different possible combinations. You have two capital letters, you have a capital and a lowercase. You could also have two lowercase letters. Now, each one of these has a specific name. So we'll start with the first one. A heterozygous genotype refers to a two-letter combination that includes one dominant and one recessive allele. So this is how we would write it. You would have an uppercase letter and a lowercase letter. Heterozygous means different. So we have a capital and a lowercase. Now, the other two genotypes, they're going to have the word homozygous. Now, if heterozygous means different, homozygous means the same. And we just have to be very careful with the word that comes after it. So, homozygous means same. Dominant, we know that we're going to use two uppercase letters. A homozygous dominant genotype will include two dominant alleles. So, when I write it, I'm going to put the same letters, and they're both dominant. They're both uppercase. For a heterozygous genotype, we have almost the same thing. Homo means same. Recessive, now I'm using lowercase letters. So I have two recessive alleles, and when I write them out, I'm going to have two of the same letters, but they're both recessive. Now, we were just talking about genotypes. We were talking about the two-letter combinations. Now we're going to move on to phenotypes. When we talk about phenotypes, we're talking about the physical appearance of that trait. What do they actually look like? Examples of this could include things like short, yellow, curly, straight, slim, tall. Anything that you can see, any physical appearance would be considered a phenotype.